Hello and welcome back to the channel and to what is a long overdue video. And today I'm going to be talking about the Rover 75 V8 Tourer and how I came to buy it. Our story begins way back in late September 2021. I'd just had a 3-week holiday, and as is usually the case, whenever you're available, nothing ever comes up. And when you're not available, things appear. And if you're like me, if I'm at one end of the country, the vehicle's at the other end. And I can be in the south and it's in the north, and I can be in the north and it's in the south. It was a Thursday evening. I was looking on the internet just to see what was going on, what was out there, what was for sale. And I looked on Car and Classic, and along came an MG ZTT V8 Tourer. And not just that, but it was a Series 1. And as I understand it, they only made 26 Series 1 Tourers, and only one of those was a non-SE spec, so it made it quite rare. It was on a 53 plate, and it was in Le Mans Green, 62,000 miles, and it was in Newcastle, which was only about 50 miles up the road from me. And I thought, oh, that looks a bit interesting. Do you know, I might have a look at that. And I also got to thinking, now, I recall the MG Owners Club magazine, when the MG ZT V8 was launched. On the front cover, they had an X-Power Grey Saloon, and they had a Le Mans Green Tourer. And I thought, is this one of the press vehicles at launch? So I started to do a bit more digging. And somehow I ended up on a website, Desperate Seller. And I came across a Rover 75 V8 Tourer for sale, British Racing Green, 19,000 miles on the clock. And my initial thoughts were, how old's this advert? No, this can't be right. Because these cars are quite rare. And you don't normally see them for sale on things such as Auto Trader or normal websites. They usually sell by word of mouth, and they usually sell very quickly. And I thought, nah, is this some sort of a scam? It can't be right. I'm a bit dubious. Anyway, I was looking a bit further, and I ended up on Auto Trader. And there it was again. And I thought, yeah, maybe it is right. But it seems unbelievable. And I saw the name of the company that was advertising it. It was called Baxter and Simpson Heritage. I thought, who owns the company? Is it Mark Baxter? So I looked on the website, and yes, I was right. My instincts were correct. Mark Baxter was one of the owners of this company. And the slipper began to fit. I thought, yes, it is genuine. Because the story behind this is that Mark Baxter was the head buyer for the SMC Motor Group, which had garages in the southeast of England. They had them in Slough, Windsor, High Wycombe, and various places around the southeast. And they were a big outfit as regards to selling MG Rover vehicles. They were an MG Rover dealer. And they always used to sell cars which, in my opinion, were not like vehicles that other MG Rover dealers sold. And I say that because you might get the odd monogram car that was sold by a Rover dealer, but not on the scale that SMC used to sell. They used to get all sorts of special vehicles, and what you might think were one-offs. They sold a two-tone Rover 75, which was said to be a prototype for the two-tone versions, which were later released at the motor shop. It was quite special. Following the collapse of MG Rover, of course, SMC were able to obtain lots more special cars. And I understand that they bought over half of the engineering fleet. It's quite possible that some of these cars may never have seen the light of day. There were special development vehicles and some very interesting ones. And they also sold the one and only MG ZTT V8 385 brake horsepower Roush supercharged engined car. It was due to go for noise testing in Jerez, Spain, and it was hoped that it was going to go into production later in the year. Of course, that never happened, but that was sold through SMC. I wasn't looking to buy a Rover 75 or an MG ZT. I was looking for something a bit more sensible. I was fancying something like a Jensen Interceptor. But when I saw this advert, I thought, I can't ignore this. I've got to take it seriously because if I don't buy this car, I'll probably never get a chance again. So first thing Friday morning, I got in touch with the garage. I wanted to know a little bit more about the car. Now, I would never normally buy a car sight unseen, but with this car, I knew that it was one of those chances that you would have to take. And there was always an exception, and this is one of those exceptions. And I spoke to the salesman and explained that unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to get to see it today or on Saturday morning because you close at 1 o'clock, and it's just not possible that I'm going to be down there in time to be able to view it. Is there any way I could leave a holding deposit and I can come along and have a look at it Monday, Tuesday, and if I like it, yes, I buy it, and if I don't, fair enough. And he said, yeah, that should be fine. We can do that. And he also went on to tell me that they had sold the car earlier in the month, but they'd taken it back off the chap because he couldn't get insurance for it. So I said to him, right, well, can you just give me 5 minutes? I'll just make some inquiries and I'll come back to you. And he said, yeah, no problem. So my first thoughts were, can I get insurance for it? Is that going to be an issue? Because it's an estate and most of the records will probably say that they're all saloons. So I got in touch with my insurance broker, explained what it was. I said that it needed to be down as being a tourer in estate. Was that a problem? They assured me, no, not an issue. And of course, that was all I needed to know. So I got back in touch with the salesman. The gentleman who answered said, I'm sorry, but he's not available. He's gone to the post office. So I explained our conversation, and it turned out that it was Mark Baxter himself I was speaking to, Mark Baxter, the legend. And I said, right, what do we need to do about the holding deposit? And he said, we don't need to worry about that. He said, I know you're genuine. He said, if you can come down and see it Monday or Tuesday, I'll hold it for you. And I said, now look, are you sure? Because I would rather pay a deposit now than travel all that way to arrive and then find that you've sold it to somebody else. He said, no. He said, I guarantee you, you come along Monday or Tuesday and I'll keep it for you. And we'll take it from there. So I said, right, that's what we'll do. So after putting the phone down, of course, I immediately booked time off work and I booked a hotel for the Monday night. It's now Saturday and I'm starting to make some preparations for the journey down, do a bit of planning, and events take a turn in that news reports start telling us that there's major panic basically in the south of England. There's runs on the petrol stations, garages are running out. They're starting to limit supplies of petrol to people. They're talking about only letting essential workers, key workers, have the petrol. And it's all been blamed on Brexit. Because the Road Hauliers Association made the claim that it's difficult to recruit sufficient drivers. Of course, the Transport Secretary, I believe, made an announcement, said something on the lines of, there's no need to panic. We have plenty of petrol. We're not going to run out of petrol. There's no need to go to the petrol stations, which, of course, had the opposite effect, which made things even worse, as they always do. And petrol stations were starting to run dry and there were beginning to be issues. And this made me then think, oh dear, am I going to have enough petrol to be able to get down and kind of get back? But I thought, right, I'll take the car to the garage, I'll fill it up with petrol. And that's what I did. Because we didn't have any issues in the north, quite sensible. People were just going about the normal business and just being sensible. And I topped up the car, and I also bought a couple of jerry cans. So I thought, well, as long as I can get down there, even if I have to leave the car down there and come back by other means, at least I'll have got to see the car. And later in the day, I'm just doing a little bit more research on the internet. And strangely enough, I can't believe it. On Auto Trader, there's actually a second V8 Tourer that's come up for sale. I can't believe it. It just never happened. I've never known it. I've never ever seen any V8 Tourers come up for sale before, and two in the same weekend. And it works out. This one is a black Tourer, and it's got 47,000 miles on the clock, and it's one owner from new. And I know this car because I saw it at the 2015 Longbridge Car Rally in April, and I spoke to the owner, and I remember seeing the car so well. And it's not like the usual black cars. This is actually solid black. I believe it's called Raven black, where normally the metallic black. And it's the only solid black one that they actually made. Rover made two blacks. They made a metallic black, which was called Pearl Black, and I believe the paint code was PBT. And then there was the solid black, or Raven Black, but it was just listed by Rover as black paint COB, which stands for clear over base. However, that is Raven Black, and the paint code, I believe, is PMF. And where's this one for sale? It's for sale near Abingdon. I thought, oh, well, that's not too far out of where I want to be. But the question is, how far out the way is it going to be? And am I going to have enough petrol? Because really, I've got to go and see this one as well. To be fair to myself as well, I've got to go and have a look at them both and make an informed choice. Anyway, I looked on Google and I worked out that if I went a certain way, it should theoretically only take me about 9, 11 miles out of the way, all being well. I thought, right, I've got to go and see it so long as I've got enough petrol, and so long as when I get down to the Toaster area, I think I'm comfortable to go and see it. It's now Monday, and we set off on the journey, and I find myself looking at every petrol station as we drive down, looking to see if there's any issues. And in the north, not a problem at all. And it's not an issue until we get down to Northampton Toaster area, and we then start to see garages which have got either big queues or they've got signs saying no petrol. And I'm all right for petrol at the moment, but I'm thinking if I could get some more petrol, if I could just top the tank up, I might just have enough to get me back home as well. And the last petrol station before joining the M40 and the Ibista, I found a petrol station which had big queues of vehicles waiting to get petrol, and I thought I'll join the queue. And I was in the queue for half an hour, but the good thing was they had petrol, and they weren't rationing how much you could have. So I was able to top the tank up, which was a bit of a relief because I also thought, right, I should now be able to get back home, and I can also have enough petrol to allow me to go and see the other Rover V8 near Abingdon. So our next stop was Lodge Hill Garage at Abingdon. And as we arrived, I immediately spotted the V8 Tourer on the forecourt. And I've got to say, what a great bunch of guys Lodge Hill appeared to be. I liked the way that they conducted business. They seemed very professional. And I was quite impressed with the outfit, to be honest. I knew nothing about them. I'd never had anything to do with them. They didn't know I was going to come and see the car. And I was quite impressed. The car, when I first saw it, it was filthy. It needed a good cleaning. That didn't bother me in the slightest because I could see what the car was like anyway. As I said to you before, it was Raven Black. It was a contemporary model, which meant that it came with the MG ZT sports seats in it. It was black leather as well. And it had the black oak dash. It had the sunroof, the Highline navigation, etc. And it was an impressive looking car. It was far better than I expected it to be. The salesman apologised for it being so filthy. He said, we haven't had a chance to develop it. He said, we've just got it in. He said, the gentleman was a local chap who was experiencing trouble with his sight, and unfortunately he's had to sell the car and give up driving. And of course they knew how rare this car was as well. But it was a good chunk of money less than the one I was going to go and see. It was about £5,000 or £6,000 cheaper than the one that I was going to see. The only thing wrong with the car was the front bumper, and it had suffered some damage. The stainless steel grille surround was out of its normal place, and there'd been attempts to try and stick it back in, but it hadn't worked very well, and it looked a little bit unsightly, as well as there was a big split in the bumper where something had hit it and gone through the bumper itself, which was also near the grille surround. But the salesman assured me, he said, no, don't worry about that, because he said, we're going to make sure that that's put right. And he said, that'll be right before that goes out. And I believed them, which is unusual. But I trusted that what they said they would do. That's how much confidence I actually had in these guys. And so that didn't worry me. I thought, yeah, he says he'll do it, and I believe he will do it. So I explained to the salesman I had another one I needed to go and see. And I bet he thought, yeah, sure you have. But to be fair to Mark, I'd already committed to go and see this car, and I had to go and see it. As well as making a proper informed choice, I needed to see both vehicles and decide which was the best car for me. And I said to the salesman, right, if this other car isn't what I expect it to be, then I'll come back and I'll buy this one. And off we went. We made our way over to High Wycombe via the BMW Mini factory. So that was an extra bonus point for me, being able to see that as well. The time's now approaching 3:30, and we've arrived in High Wycombe. And I'm thinking, well, rather than go and see the car tomorrow, I'd rather go and see it today if I can, if we've got time, because I know that it won't be much longer before they'll be closing. So I gave them a quick ring to see if it was possible. And they said, yeah, by all means, pop along today, which is what we did. And when we arrived, the gates to the premises were locked. It was an electric gate. So I rang them through. They buzzed the gate open, and I went down the driveway and parked up. And as the salesman brought the car up towards us, it looked so impressive, and it was beautiful. And I just knew instantly, that's my car. You just do, don't you? And I thought, this is the one for me. So, of course, I then got my overalls on, and I went all over the car. I was underneath it and gave it a good examination underneath. And it was fantastic. And obviously the interior, everything about the car was just beautiful. And it lived up to expectations. And I knew it was more money than the other one, but to me, there wasn't really any contest. The other car was a nice car, but to me, this car appealed to me so much more. The colour, the interior, the specification, everything about it was just right for me. Now down to business and onto the deal. And I knew very well that he knew how rare this car was. I knew how rare it was. And I knew that if I didn't pay the price that he was asking, somebody else would. But of course, you've got to try and chance your arm a little bit, haven't you? You don't always pay the full price if you can help it. So I made an offer, and the salesman said, right, I'll go and have a word with him, see what he has to say. And I also insisted that the car had a new 12 months MOT as well. And he came back after a little while, said he'd spoken to Mark. Mark said, no, he couldn't do it for the price that I'd suggested, but he would knock £200 off the price. And he would MOT it. I said, right, fine, that's fine. That was £200 I didn't expect to get off the price. And if anything else, I thought, well, that'll pay for my petrol home. So off we went into the office, signed all the paperwork. I had a good chat with Mark. And I just look forward to collecting it the following week after it had been MOT'd and prepared. So after we'd done the deal, Mark went on to tell me something which didn't surprise me in the slightest. And he had nothing whatsoever to gain by telling me this because we'd already done the deal. And he said to me, right, now I'm going to tell you, if you hadn't bought the car, I had 3 other people already lined up waiting to buy it. And I quite believe that to be the case. And Mark was a total gentleman and a pleasure to do business with. And true to his word, he kept the car for me. He didn't sell it to somebody else. And he gave me a price reduction as well. So I have nothing but praise for him, and a nice guy to do business with. So after the stay in the hotel overnight, I made my way back home. And we were just looking forward to the return journey on the Saturday to collect the car once it had been MOT'd and prepared for us. Of course, the petrol situation still wasn't any better. Garages were still having issues, runs on the forecourts, etc. But in the north, we were still reasonably sensible. We didn't appear to have any issues. But what I was aware of was the fact that the petrol tank, when I saw it, it indicated it had about 3/4 of a tank. When I spoke to the garage, I said, is there any way you could try and get some more petrol for me so that when I collect it, I've got a full tank to give me a chance to get home? And they said, well, there's still quite a bit of petrol in the tank. And they said, but to be honest, we can't get any petrol locally. There isn't any available. But of course, I still had my 2 jerry cans, which hopefully would give us enough petrol to get home. And we set off early on the Saturday morning. I think it was about 5 o'clock. And my cousin had very kindly offered to take me down in his car. And once again, I looked at all the petrol stations going down and thinking, well, if we can get this far north, we should be okay, hopefully. And the journey down, it was nice and dry. The roads were nice and dry. And I thought, great, because it's supposed to be heavy rain. And it was fine. I thought, great, if we can get the car put away like this, it'd be super, and enjoy the journey home. Because I did consider at one point whether I should have the car trailered home. And I thought, no, well, why not? My cousin's offered to take me down. I might as well enjoy the journey back home and enjoy the drive. And once again, we got down as far as Toaster, and the petrol stations were about the same. That's the point at which they seemed to be having issues. So we collected the car around about dinner time. And on our way out, there wasn't any petrol to be got, particularly in High Wycombe. As they'd said, there wasn't any fuel available. So I was taking a little bit of a chance, but I'd worked out that the amount of fuel that was in the tank should be sufficient to get me far enough north to be able to get some more petrol. Fingers crossed. And I had the security of the 2 jerry cans in the boot as well. But of course, I had my cousin's car to think about as well. But we hopefully should have been okay. We had 3/4 of a tank, and as we set off, it started to rain. Oh, typical. And it started to bucket down. And of course, this was a car I wasn't familiar with. I knew that I couldn't put too much power down. I didn't want to lose it. And as we were about a mile from the Bicester turnoff on the M40, we headed into a traffic jam, and the traffic came to a total standstill. There must have been an accident further up the road, and we waited in this queue of traffic for about half an hour as I slowly watched the fuel gauge drop and drop and drop, and we were down to now by about 1/4 of a tank. I thought, oh dear, I hope we get off the road soon, because if we don't get some fuel, we're going to be in trouble. Anyway, fortunately the traffic started moving, and we managed to get off the M40 at Bicester, and at Brackley I was able to stop and get some fuel. Sorry, we were both able to stop and get some fuel. And I filled the tank up, and it's the most amount of money I've ever spent on petrol filling a car tank up. But at least I knew that we now had enough petrol to get us home, and I could at least now enjoy the rest of the journey home and enjoy the first drive of the car. But of course, the weather got worse, and as we got onto the M1, the rain was absolutely pelting down, and the winds were getting very strong. We just knocked along at a steady 65 miles per hour. And I knew I couldn't put too much power down, as I said, because I wanted to take it steady. Now, on buying the car, I'd anticipated that I can expect to get 15 miles per gallon out of it. But I'd read somewhere that I should be able to get 22, and I thought, well, if I can get 22, I'll be more than happy. And it wasn't until I got home and I worked out how much I'd spent on petrol and the distance that we'd covered, and I worked out that we'd actually ended up getting 27.6 miles to the gallon. So I was over the moon. Of course, I made sure that the car was all nice and dry and clean, and we got it put away and tucked away in the garage. And pretty much that's where it was going to stay now for over the winter period, because it wasn't going to go any further. But at least I knew I'd got the car and it was safe and sound. So what happened to the black V8 Contemporary? Well, as you can imagine, it pretty much sold straight away like mine. And I think by the time I got home, it had already been sold. If I'm totally honest, I did actually consider buying both of them. But that's just plain greedy, isn't it? And where is it now? I don't know. It's disappeared. The number plate that it was on from new is no longer traceable through DVLA. And I suspect that it's been put onto a private plate. But I've not seen the car surface anywhere since, so I don't know where it is. In the next instalment, I'm going to tell you a bit more about the car's history. And I think this car's a bit special. This car has led a life, but I'm not going to say any more than that. I'll let you wait until the next episode. And I'm also going to give you some facts and figures and tell you how rare these cars actually are. So until next time, thanks for watching and take care.